Tonight, we move on to part 2 of our new series where we give you our top 24 at the running back position. It is time to get average. What is going on, guys? We are the Average Bros Fantasy Show, your one-stop shop for average advice, brought to you by Football, Darts, and Fantasy Sports Alliance. As always, I am joined by my below-average brother, Kevin. Kevin, how are you doing on this lovely evening?
I am doing just about average tonight. Got my list already. Didn't forget anybody this time, at least at
Are
the
you sure
time
about
of
that?
going live anyway. Yeah, fixed it there. Thanks to
Yeah.
Damien.
Yeah, you were not as lazy as I was, where I just kind of stuck my quarterbacks at the bottom of the list that I forgot about. But I fixed it. We got through the show, and now everybody can start making fun of you.
Correct.
But as always, before we get into our show, we would like to thank our broadcast sponsor, Football Darts. Football Darts is a dart game that combines the skills of traditional darts with the strategies of American football. This innovative dart game is played on a uniquely designed multiple target dartboard. It can be played in sports bars, at tailgate events, as league tournaments, or as a leisure activity in the comfort of your own home. If you would like to check out their officially licensed collegiate dartboards, go to footballdarts.com and make sure you guys use code IPLAYFSA at checkout to get yourself 30% off and get yourself some above average dartboards. And if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe to this show and follow us on all of our social media outlets you see here at the bottom of the screen, as well as check out our website, fsa-fr.com. And of course, please head on over and check out Brad, Josh, and Eric on the Empty Wagon show Saturday morning at midnight Eastern Standard Time. Now, for anybody who lives under a rock and has not wasn't able to catch the Average Bros last week, we went through the quarterback position, where we gave you our top 24 for the QB position in a redraft league. So there was no dynasty aspects that came into play there, as well as not only was it just Kevin and I last week, we actually invited a special guest, which last week we had Brett online with us, which here he is now.
Chimes in and said he's still mad at you about forgetting players off your list.
Well, that is in the past, and the future, the present is that you forgot about Joe Mixon, but you did add him
We're
to
not
your
going to talk
list.
about that.
So this week we move on to the running back position, alongside moving on to a new special guest, which, because of the history that these two people have, I will hand it over to Kevin to introduce our special guest for tonight.
Yes, tonight we have on Chuck Moranin of A2D Radio, the running back whisperer, if you will, all things running back over there. Good friend of mine, former co-host of Birds of a Feather. Chucks, how are you doing tonight?
What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor and a privilege, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
for joining
for
us.
being on. Now, for those of our viewers that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself and where they can find your work.
Absolutely. So you can find me all over social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the whole nine. My username on all of them is Chucks Moranin. That's ChuxMaranan. As Kevin alluded to, I'm part of A2D Radio, which is a Philly-based internet sports radio company. But we don't just cover Philly sports. We cover all national news too, and so many other sports, from the four majors to wrestling and combat sports and even gambling. We have a multitude of different shows that are on weekly. And I'm the co-host of Birds of a Feather, which is on every Thursday night. It's an Eagles and NFL based show, and we do a fantasy show every year. To be also for the company, I am also a content creator. I write weekly articles for A2D's website, and I create weekly film breakdown videos for A2D's social media pages. All of my content can be seen on both A2D's and my socials. And as Kevin said, also, I specialize in running back evaluations and breakdowns, but I still cover as much of football in general, overall, X's and O's and all of that, as much as I can. So again, you can find me at CHUXMARANAN.
So without further ado, let's get into our lists, gentlemen. We'll kick it to Chuck's first. We'll start just as we did last week, down at 24, and work our way up to the top, where all of us will have a Patriots running back, I assume. Dan Vitale.
If only you were that.
You're still doing this stuff?
He retired.
Oh my God, you're still.
I can't put him up there. He retired.
No,
Chuck's,
yeah.
who do you got at the bottom of your list?
All right, so I guess it's a little nerve-wracking kicking it off, but I like I told you guys before the show, I break my rankings into tiers so that people like what separates each group of running backs. And honestly, the running backs within each tier are, to me, evenly ranked. But for the purposes of the show, I didn't want to be the odd guy out. So I did number my guys. So if I'm going to start with 24, 23, and 22, I have evenly ranked. But at 24, I do have Darrell Henderson.
Okay. And who do you have at 23 and 22?
23 and 22, I have Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon.
Okay. Josh, how about your 24 through 22? And then we'll...
Okay, so I have a quick question. Darrell Henderson, he's with Miami now, correct?
No, isn't he the Rams running back?
Yeah, he's the right. Yeah.
Who was the one that went to Miami then from the Rams? I could have swore there was a running back that went.
There was a running back that went to Miami last year from San Fran, Matt Breida, but he's no longer in Miami either.
Okay, yeah, it wasn't him. Okay, then I must have thought that Darrell Henderson went to Miami.
Yeah, Henderson is Cam Akers' replacement.
Yeah.
However, for me at 24, Malcolm Brown. Yeah, we have Brett and Damien, not the
other Damien.
The other Damien. The Damien that we actually like. That helps us out. And I could have swore there was one that went to Miami. But at 24 to 22, at the bottom of it, I was torn between Rojo, Edmonds, or Gaskins. But I actually put Gaskins at the bottom. And then going up, I have CEH and then J.K. Dobbins.
Okay. So for me, I went 24, Eckler, Swift at 23, and CEH at 22. And just to let the cat out of the bag early, there is no San Fran running back on my list. I know that you had put one there for yours, Chuck. So I have no, I wouldn't say faith, but I have no confidence in ranking any of them just because, you don't know, who's going to play when, what the loaded carry is going to be when it kicks off, if they're all healthy. And I believe they have Wilson too, who's out, but not all season, who could come back in the mix. So I had a tough time picking one that was going to be a good enough standout to make my list. So I do want to get your thoughts on those guys.
So yeah, I mean it's a good argument to make because with San Fran and Kyle in his scheme, he's so used to just taking mild or solid talents and making them look better than what they are. Like, I mean, Raheem Mostert in a vacuum, he's not a great talent, but he fits that system perfectly. And so statistics wise, he's going to produce, and that's why he's been so highly ranked for fantasy purposes. But with me, I think it's different this year because with Trey Sermon, and it's more so Trey Sermon and me banking on Raheem Mostert wanting to, because he's in a contract year, he's going to want to really show what he can do. And to me, it's those two guys and everyone else. I mean, Elijah Mitchell, you said Jeff Wilson. I mean, I know they brought in the guy from the Giants, Gallman. They also drafted. Yep. I mean, they still have JaMychal Hasty from last year. Those are solid guys, but they're just a bunch of guys that are behind these two. And Kyle Shanahan traded up and drafted in the third round Trey Sermon. That's not anything to scoff at or to ignore. Kyle Shanahan doesn't really do that kind of stuff. And so when he wants to trade up for someone, you really know that he has them highly regarded. Now going into the season, he is going to be behind Mostert, but that team is such a dominant run team that I honestly believe Trey Sermon is going to be able to have the ability to etch some kind of role. I mean, like, I know that I have him all the way down 22, so it's not like I have him really ranked that high. But once you get past like a bunch of the bell cows that are very talented, I can't put him behind some of these other guys who might be the bell cow but aren't as talented, because I think Trey Sermon in that system, that zone run system, is an absolute perfect match. And I think he's going to take the goal line carries. And I think he's going to produce a decent amount. So I think he's, for all those reasons, that's why I have him at 22. And, just for reference, I do have him ahead of guys like Gaskin and Edmonds and who else? Melvin Gordon, James Robinson, Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne. I have him ranked higher than all of them because I don't think Gaskin's that great of a talent, and I think Miami is, Josh, you mentioned Miami. You thought a running back went to Miami. It seems like all the no-name running backs have gone to Miami in the past season. They collect running backs that aren't that talented, and they just kind of want to see which one will flourish. And Gaskin's a solid talent, but I don't think he's anything special. So I can't rank him ahead of Trey Sermon.
Yeah, it is interesting that you have those guys there because people, especially in the fantasy realm, right? Everyone's afraid of a committee. Nobody wants a committee type back, but nobody realizes that San Fran is a committee on steroids, that it's just like taking 2 or 3 receivers from a pass heavy team. You would draft all 3 of Tampa's receivers, no problem, real early. But when you talk about San Fran, their running backs are the same way, just because you got to remember they won a playoff game last year and only threw the ball 8 times.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah. So, that's a team that's definitely run heavy, so it's worth noting at least the 2 top guys like you mentioned. So, Josh, who do you have at 21?
At 21, I have Mike Davis. Just came over from Carolina, so staying within the division. And I think he did pretty solid enough with Carolina in place of McCaffrey to where he can make an impact for Atlanta. But just the reason that he's so low on my list, or even that he almost didn't make the list, is just because I just think that Atlanta is going to have the same defense as last season, where they're constantly playing from behind and they have to throw the ball. So they're not really they're probably going to run it, slim to none.
Yeah, I agree. I like Mike Davis a lot. I think that he stepped in well, but I think Carolina gave him the opportunity to do so. Atlanta's definitely a pass-first team anyway. You look at the talent out of the running back room that they have brought in, trying to find a back, and it hasn't really worked out just because they don't know how to really use them right, and they haven't in a little while. So I think he would do well as far as on field goes, maybe a stat line, and help that team win. Just not enough fantasy production to be an RB2.
I like Mike Davis. I did a I've always liked Mike Davis. Actually, like I felt like he's always been an underrated running back, and it's nice to see him finally get the opportunity to be the lead guy. And I think he's going to be solid. I think he's going to be good. I have him pretty much right below, right below the 24 spot with a bunch of other guys I did mention already. So I couldn't put him above Darrell Henderson, but I do like Mike Davis a lot. I think he's an underrated talent, has been for years. He's a big, powerful guy, good pass catcher. So I think he's going to do a good job in Atlanta.
Yeah, 21 for myself. I have another pass catcher type that I think that will produce, especially given the new scenario that they've kind of created in that team, and that's ETN for Jacksonville. I think that the switching him to play wide out a little bit helps him out, especially in a PPR type league. I think that he'll get enough of those, say, your first and second down reps, where he can be a little bit more elusive, get outside a little bit, your outside pitches, stuff like that, enough to stay relevant. And then obviously finding the end zone through the air helps him out.
Yeah, it's very interesting you talk about ETN. Like, everyone, was like, I remember weeks ago or months ago now, everyone was up in arms about him, getting reps at wide receiver. I thought it was a great thing because I do think he has that ability to, or the potential to maybe develop into that role that Alvin Kamara kind of has, where, he doesn't take like 20, 25 touches. He doesn't get 20, 25 carries a game, but he'll get like 10 to 15 and then mix in a bunch of catches, and I think he's going to complement James Robinson really well. So I like that ranking at 21. I think it's very fair. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't know if you were going to go.
No, go ahead. Who do you got at 21?
At my 21, I have a guy who I've never really been that high on because of his lack of versatility, lack of durability, and fumbling issues. But I couldn't drop him lower than this because if he's healthy and he's playing, he is going to be the main guy, and he's one of the more powerful runners in the league, and it's Chris Carson. I just couldn't have him lower than some of the other guys that are below him who are splitting time, like you said. So like with him being the main guy in Seattle, it's more of like he's kind of has to be there by default. But I like his running style. He's going to get a bunch of goal line carries. He's a good runner, good power runner, and I think let's hope he can stay healthy. He hasn't been healthy. Let's hope he can stay healthy and not cough up the ball as much as he's been known to.
Yeah, I have him ranked as well a little bit higher, but I have him in my what I would consider the question mark category, where there's a ton of guys that do have a big upside. Like you said, he doesn't really split time, so he's their bell cow, but they pass the ball so much, and the Seahawks are very, very streaky. Not even considering the injury issues that he's had in the past, but just because they're so streaky, you never know when it's going to be 40 points a game and Russ is cooking and the run game's working or everything is shut down. It's like it's all or nothing with those guys. So, I don't mind seeing him here at 21. I think that's a fair assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And Brett chimes in with this and says, running backs have missed more games due to injury than Chris Carson since 2018 is Chris McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Saquon, Austin Eckler, and Joe Mixon.
What's that?
Yeah. I think that that's a fair assessment, but the issue is the games that he does play, it's not Chris McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, or Saquon type games where you're in a run-heavy team to make up for the games you miss as a fantasy perspective. When he's in, you're only looking at a 10 to 15, maybe 16 point average versus all of those guys are in the 20s, 19, 20, 22s.
With the exception of Eckler.
Yeah, with the exception of Eckler, who almost got booted from my list.
I refuse.
But
refuse to get behind him.
we're doing PPR though, right? Full PPR for running
Yeah,
back. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Just making sure.
Josh, who do you have at 21?
I already
You already
said I had
said.
Mike Davis.
All right, how about 20?
At 20, I have DeAndre Swift. I don't know. I just think that regardless of, having other running backs there last season, and then, I mean, the running backs that were there last season, they were injured anyways. So, I just don't think that he's going to produce as much as you would want him to. And I believe they did bring in another running back as well. If MFL isn't playing with my emotions here, and they did bring in Jamal Williams. So
Yeah.
that's just another running back to, eat at his workload. And I believe is unlike Kerryon Johnson and can actually stay healthy throughout the season.
Well, Carrion can't stay healthy either, so. Or if that's who you're referring to. Who
That's what I was
can't.
saying. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
saying Jamal can, Kerryon can't.
Yeah, last year in FSA standings, he was 19th overall, 189 points, only a 14-point average because he only missed 2 games and just had low scoring, as you mentioned, with the timeshare. So this is a guy that a lot of people are high on because he has a talent. It's just on a team that doesn't know how to use him properly.
Well,
And I
that's the
mean,
thing. Yeah, I mean with Swift, like I know a lot of people are high on him, and to Josh, to your point, I was questioning that too, but all the reports that I hear out of Detroit are that he is the guy, and like Jamal Williams is there just to spell him. So I mean, and I do believe him, and having Deuce Staley there as the new running backs coach, Deuce Staley has done wonders in Philly with the running backs in terms of development. So I think he's going to get the most out of Swift. At the same time, like with Swift, I can't put him in the same tier. Like him, Carson, and then my other two guys, I have in the same tier. And they're my fourth tier. I can't put Swift in the same tier as some of the other guys that are from his draft class though, and you'll see where I have them ranked. But they are ranked higher than him, and that's because I think Swift really struggled with pass catching more than people are alluded to. Like he has some faults in his pass catching, his route running, his hands, and he's not as dynamic of an athlete as some of the other guys. And so, like in terms of pure talent, I don't have him on par with some of his classmates from last year's draft, and so that's why I had to bump him down. But I do think he is one of the last people you can feel confident in that's going to get like a lead ball carrier workload. We'll see how good he produces with that workload.
Yeah, so I will say 2 things here. One, that I think if Swift was going to meet or exceed expectations from coming into the league, it would have been last year. He was given every opportunity to, with Carrion being down and out, and then being depleted pretty much elsewhere, receiver-wise. I mean, Marvin Jones was your number one guy. Nothing to really bring home about, so I think he would have stepped up last year. But Brett earlier mentioned that CEH is your Hurts this week, as in guys that we kind of forgot about. Last year in FSA's points, CEH finished 21st, 2 spots behind Swift, so worse off than where we're at now.
Real quick, Kev, what list are you looking at?
Total points for all players last year, regular season, top 24 of 2020.
Because on the list that I have, he finished 22nd.
Who?
CEH.
Maybe there was it's 1 spot up. I would have to take a look at it.
All right. Yeah, and pretty much the whole reason I had CEH at 23. It wasn't because I forgot him. I just think that there's way too much competition in Kansas City for him to go any higher than that. I mean, they're a pass-first team. And like I said, when you have Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman now, Travis Kelce, everybody else all around him, it's just going to be hard for them to give any type of looks to Clyde.
Brett asks if we see Swift getting an increase in value with Goff there. I don't really. I think that, to me, Goff and Stafford are very similar in talent and approach, that it was kind of just a new environment swapping the two. I don't see Goff bringing any value to Swift, out of the backfield wise. I mean, he's got less of an arm, so you're going to see less big plays, which could lead to more check down type stuff. But Swift, as you mentioned, isn't that guy. But I don't think it's that much more than what Stafford brought him. So
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's Goff that's going to give Swift an increase. I just think that it's, the loss of Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay that would give Swift any type of increase in value.
So my 20 is where I have Myles Gaskin.
It's high.
I think not missing any time. I believe he missed 4 games last year where Ahmed stepped in. I think another season with the, or I should say a full season with Tua and the Tua offense versus the early season Fats Magic offense that they ran might benefit from him a little bit. So I have high hopes. And so do my dynasty teams, but I digress.
See, I gave up on my dynasty teams.
Well, that's because everyone got hurt for you, so we're not even going to ask you about that sad song.
Wentz is out. Cousins is on the COVID list. James Robinson now has Etienne to battle with. It's not going to be a good season.
All right. That brings us to what, 19, Josh?
I didn't say my 20.
Oh,
I was just about to say
20.
that.
Yeah. For what it's worth, DeAndre Swift I had at 19. So I didn't have him far from you, Josh. So we have just about like the same thing. And it's interesting that you're coming in from a similar perspective from me, that like you're more skeptical. That's why we have him lower than everyone else. So it's nice to know that I'm not the only one. But at 20, I have David Montgomery. I have, again,
really?
Ooh.
Yeah. David Montgomery, this, I guess, low, as you can say. He's in my 4th tier. I think with Montgomery, what I would have had him higher, but I did look at his 4-game stretch last year where he did produce at a high level, and they were all against bad defenses. And then when he started facing good defenses again, his prediction kind of dipped again. And, looking at his film, he's always been someone that has kind of struggled with footwork down the line of scrimmage. In terms of having the right spacing when making his cuts behind the line and being more efficient and less dramatic. He's someone who likes to make emphatic and big movements when he doesn't have to. And he's improved in that area, but I haven't seen enough. But I do like his skills. And so I hope that me putting him here at 20 is kind of like motivation for him to get, to outproduce that ranking. But I'm looking at the other guys that I have ranked ahead of him. And at the same time, I feel confident because I like a lot of the other guys, especially in PPR, considering that Terry Cohen is coming back and Nagy really hasn't been a great offensive schemer since his first year. He's kind of gone downhill in that regard. I feel confident in terms of preseason rankings to have him at 20. Now, having Justin Fields in there could help him a lot, but that depends on how Justin Fields progresses. We don't know how ready Justin Fields will be. He's going to be the guy from the get-go. How ready is he? So, and you guys have a PPR. You guys PPR scoring. If it wasn't PPR scoring, he'd be higher. But in PPR scoring, I'm looking at some of these other guys, and I'm like, yeah, I can't put Montgomery above these guys. So I have him at 20.
Yeah, Chris does mention that Montgomery also has to contend with Cohen, where Cohen was out, I believe, all of last year. And he says that being a running quarterback may hurt him once Dalton comes out, because then you have the, say, Josh Allen effect type, to where it's not on running downs. You might just do an RPO to where you look to your first read and then just take off, which he quite possibly could do versus a designed run. Josh, who do you have at 19?
At 19, I have Melvin Gordon. I don't even know. I don't even know what I was going to say about Melvin Gordon. I completely drew a blank.
That is the reason why I have him not on my list at all. I think the past 2 years, having the injuries and losing momentum, I would say, to other more lackluster backs, especially they drafted a running back to come in there. I think the rookie ends up winning the job. I don't think that we see Melvin Gordon of the past return.
I don't necessarily see the rookie taking over. I mean, I pretty much just have him slated to just put up the same amount of points that he did this season, probably regress a little bit if the rookie does take a little play time away from him. But the other reason is just with all the other running backs returning from injuries and having teammates come back from injuries, which apparently affects their performance. That's just why I have him dropping down from 14, which is where he finished last season, all the way down to 19 this season.
Yeah, at 19 is where I have Miles Sanders, another committee type guy. Big question mark for me, which is why I have him lower, although I do like his ability. I think if all of the running backs are healthy there, it's going to make it a really tough time to decide who is going to be the true RB1, although it should be Miles. If Carrion is healthy, he could go off. And you got Kenny Gainwell there, and then one other that they brought back. I'm blanking on.
Jordan Howard.
Yeah, Jordan Howard. So and Boston Scott, who is probably going to be more of a returner if they don't cut anybody. So
you have him in 19.
Yeah.
That's not a bad ranking. I don't have him. You'll see where I have him right. I don't have him that far off. So I think it's fair, but I think there are a lot of fantasy people that share your skepticism and are like, oh, he's just gonna be a committee back. I'm telling you right now, from being a Philly fan, this is not a committee. Miles is the guy, and a lot of his struggles last year, he struggled with drops, but he ran the ball very, very well. The reason why he only had 800 yards rushing is because he had a different lineup in his starting offensive line every single week. There was a new lineup, a new starting five every single week. It was that banged up. And he progressed well and developed well as a runner in terms of vision, decision-making, running hard. And he is poised to have a big year. And I think people outside of Philadelphia who don't realize the pulse of the team, they're very high on Miles. And Miles is the guy. You talk about Gainwell. He's going to be the Nyheim Hines of the Philadelphia Eagles. And Nyheim Hines strictly was a receiver. And that's what Gainwell is going to be. Whether it be Carry On or Jordan Howard, they're going to get some reps, but they're not going to get the majority of reps. We talked about Carry On before. He couldn't stay healthy. Talking about Jordan Howard, who was miscast in Miami, was let go, and because all he did was goal line carries. So you're talking about a stable of guys that they're not going to threaten Miles Sanders talent wise. He's going to be the guy. Now, is Miles going to be like a 25 carry guy? No, he's not. I mentioned ETN having sort of like a Kamara role, and that's what I see for Miles. I think he's going to get around 15 carries a game and then get a bunch of receptions too. But I think his big playability is too. He led the league, or was tied with someone. I forget what it was, but he led the league in 40 plus yard runs, and that's with a horrible offensive line. Now imagine if the offensive line stays healthy, and what he can do with that with a better coach that knows how to use them, other than Doug Peterson. So I mean, the 19 is fair, but I think he also has more upside than you or a lot of fantasy heads are giving him credit for. So I think that that needs to be spoken for. Is that this is not a committee in Philly? It's Miles Sanders and everyone else.
Yeah, I think that Philly falls into the same group in the fantasy realm as people see San Fran, especially with less on the injury side with Philly, more on the coaching side for them, because it is a new staff, it is a new OC, and they're doing a little bit of different things with the run game coordinator than they did last year. But I think that's where people put that big committee, right? Because they've got 5 or 6 guys who could potentially all make the team out of the backfield. But essentially, like you said, it is a one-man show as far as the lead reps. You don't see that changing game to game, which I believe is quite possible, especially if Miles does what he does and performs and is not moved all over like last year, and basically has to do what he doesn't do every game. So I could see him moving up, but I see 19 as more of a floor spot for him.
And that's fair. Yeah. Like I said, 19 is a fair ranking.
Yeah.
I just seen too many people think that he doesn't have much upside, which I definitely disagree with.
Who do you have at 18?
Me
Chuck.
or
Yeah.
me?
Yeah, Chuck.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
I already said my 19. 18, and this might surprise people, but I really had to think about it. But 18, I do have Kareem Hunt, and I know that he is behind Nick Chubb, but Cleveland is a run-first team, and Kareem Hunt has a role. And, talent-wise, I always made the argument that Kareem Hunt never stopped being an elite talent. He just started playing with another elite talent in Nick Chubb. And so Kareem Hunt is a better all-around running back than Nick Chubb, and he is the guy they look to when they need, a running back to be used in the passing game, user pass protection. And so I know that his upside isn't that high because he's always going to be playing with Chubb, but I also think that his floor is really high because he's always going to have that role, and he's an immense talent at the running back position that even with semi-limited touches, he's going to make the most out of them. And again, Cleveland's a run-first team. They're going to run the ball. So there are more than enough carries to go around in Cleveland between Chubb and Hunt.
And if you take a look at where they had finished last year, I know that Chubb missed a couple of games helping Hunt out a little bit, but they both finished as RB1s last year inside the top 12. So you get a couple of big names back from injury, a couple of young guys moving up. I could see where he finishes right around here. I do personally have him a little bit higher just because I believe in his ability out of the backfield in the pass catching type role, like you mentioned. I think the games that the games that Chubb missed also hurt Hunt because it's not like you can have both of them out there and you don't know what one's going to do. Like when Kamara had Ingram. And
Yeah.
I see this as a very, very similar situation. I believe they're a lot closer. You know, when Kamara was out there, I mean, you knew that that was the guy. When Ingram was out there by himself, you know it's more likely just a pass to somebody versus with these two guys, it's a whole lot closer in their abilities. So where you don't necessarily know where it's going to go. So I don't mind him here. I am a little bit higher on him.
Oh, good. I thought I was high.
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna be like 18. That's really high for Hunt, and so I was a little conservative with him. But I like it that you have him higher. I like that.
Josh, who do you have there at 18?
At 18, I have Antonio Gibson. I mean, just because of why are you looking at me like that, Kev?
I'm looking at
I
my
saw
list and looking at you.
You were giving me that like slow nod. But just because McKissick is there, I actually didn't put McKissick on this list because I think with Gibson being healthy for a full season, he's going to start pulling more work towards his way, but not enough to where it makes a full impact for him to be that RB1. So I for me, I just think that the middle of the table, or just about at the middle of the table, is where he belongs.
Yeah, I definitely like Gibson. I think that bringing in Fitzpatrick helps him more, just because they can establish a better pass game to open up for the run with him a little bit. Hopefully, it's a little bit more steady quarterback wise than last year. I do like McKissick as well. He's just short on my list. I know he's more of their receiving back, which you would think would bode well to be on the list. But I think that Gibson takes a step forward and takes away any type of run share that McKissick had and moves him more to a pure pass catcher.
Yeah, I think I'm more along the lines with you, Kev. I think I'm higher on than Gibson than Josh is. Are you as well?
Yeah, I'm not far off,
Okay, all right. So
but
yeah,
yeah, I am a little higher.
I'm higher on Gibson, and when when I mention him, I'll get into more on. But yeah, I think the whole McKissick talk, like, yeah, he gained a few pounds. McKissick isn't anyone. I'm telling you, like, McKissick isn't anything special. He's a scat back. He's a dime a dozen, and I know he wants more touches, but he's not going to get more touches. It's Gibson's show, so I'm higher on him than 18.
Did I say? 18 for myself. Probably my biggest question mark I have on my whole list is a non-receiver for Tampa, and this is where I put Rojo on the list. Basically split 50-50 time with Fournette. He was kind of the regular season guy, and then Fournette lit it up in the playoffs. So it's really hard to see coming into this season where they're going to land and where that carry share is going to be, especially with them bringing in yet another running back and having Keyshawn Vaughn there. So the hopes from last year, I just think get a little bit better, and I think he falls about 18, but could see where it could be a big miss.
Yeah, I was about to say, because talent-wise, I think Rojo is far and away better than Fournette talent-wise, but for some reason, Arians doesn't see it that way, so he splits carries with Fournette, and then they brought in. I mean, neither of them can catch the ball well, and that's why they brought in Gio. So
Yeah.
like you're talking. To me, the Bucks running backs are on. They don't touch my top 24. They're nowhere near my top 24 because it's too there's too much question mark around that backfield.
I believe I don't know where Rojo finished 17th last year according to my list. I don't know where Fournette finished, but I'm really surprised that they did bring in somebody else. Oh, 39th, way off for Fournette. I'm just surprised that they did bring in um, another back instead of trying to develop Keyshawn Vaughn a bit. It just seems like they had no love for him last year whatsoever, especially a young talent. Like they didn't really work with him much. Like, yeah, okay, we're just gonna side table this project and just run with the two we got.
Because I don't think Vaughn is anything special either. A lot of people liked him. When I studied him in the draft, I didn't see anything that stood out. Like even as a just as strictly as a pass catching back, nothing stood out to me about him.
Yeah, I don't think he's anything necessarily special, but I don't know why, especially with all the money you now have on the team, bringing back every starter from last year, if it was really necessary to go sign another running back versus the three you got. And
I think it's because Gio is a proven pass catcher, and they didn't want to go. Like, if you remember watching Bucks games, and I'm sure you did with Tom Brady there, I'm sure you did, but like they were trying to throw the ball to the running backs all the time. And how many drops did they have? Like neither Fournette or Rojo like really solidified themselves as a pass catching back at all. And you know Brady well. He likes his running backs to be good pass catchers. So I think with them being in win now mode, they're like, we can't develop anyone. We're not going to bank on Fournette and Rojo again. Let's bring in a proven veteran that can show he can do it. And so I think that's why they brought in Gio.
Who did you have up next on your list?
Me or Josh?
You.
Oh, me. Okay. I have this guy really low, so it's gonna come with a lot of shock. I have him a lot lower than a lot of people, and I'll explain why. But this is the first person of my tier 3, and in reality, all of these guys, and I have a lot of guys in tier 3. It's my RB10 all the way to RB17. So all of them are about equally ranked. So if that helps explain why, it will. But I have Jonathan Taylor at 17. And the reason why he's if I have to name someone at 17, I'm going to put Jonathan Taylor is because he's a great runner, but he is not a good pass catcher and he fumbles the ball still. And he did nothing last year to really dispel those stuff. And Nyheim Hines is back healthy again. He's going to keep that pass catching role. And then Marlon Mack, if he can be at least like 70% of what he was, he's going to take a little bit of carries. So Jonathan Taylor, the talent is immense, but like I can't put him clear and above, clear and away above the rest of the guys I have in the same tier. They're equally ranked to me, but I'm just going to put them at 17 because for sake of the discussion.
So I think ceiling 10 is what I'm going to label him. Ceiling 10, I'm okay with for him. I could see the floor falling out, especially on this whole middle grouping of people, just because it's that next step of question marks, right? It's not necessarily injury. It's more about use. It's can they produce the same as last year, or can they come back and play? So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think that definitely a lot lower than other people at 17, but knowing how you rank and knowing that it's more of a tier situation, I don't hate it here. Same kind of with my guy. This is where I have Chris Carson. I know we talked about him already. I think it's more of could be a top 10 guy or could be off the list type guy. It's just how are they going to use him? Does he stay healthy? And can they produce as a team all year for him to be relevant?
I'm actually going to follow the trend of, how they use him and if he can stay healthy. And that's why I have Austin Eckler at 17 on my list. He missed almost like half of the season last year due to injury. And, the prior year he had like 92 receptions. So he's proven himself in it to be very viable in a PPR league. But just because of last season with him being injured for so long, I would like to see him higher, but I don't know. I just don't think I can.
Eric chimes in regarding Jonathan Taylor and says Wentz injury also hurts him because he'll see 8 in the box a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I already said where Eckler was for me. I'm not an Eckler guy. I kind of lost faith after seeing injuries and lackluster performances to think that he's going to be a guy or the guy. So even with the pass catching there, I just don't think there's enough to really, wow me.
Yeah. That's funny. You mentioned. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. It's funny that we're on the topic of Eckler because I have him next at 16 for
Okay.
a lot of the same reasons. Like I love him as a pass catcher, and with a PPR, I want to put him higher because he's great PPR
Right.
guy. But that durability and like, if he's just going to be used as a pass catcher and just sparingly as a runner, I like how high is his ceiling? You know what I mean? So I want to see him bounce back from that injury. So I'm with Josh in terms of being a little skeptical, and I have him at 16.
For me, at 16, I have Josh Jacobs, which is probably a lot lower than most people. But I think he fell off a little bit last year compared to his rookie year. I think that them bringing in Kenyon Drake doesn't bode well, A, for his confidence, or B, for his carry share. I think that if they brought in a name like that, that tells me that they're now not overly sold that he can be a premier bell cow, that he needs somebody to lean on and a change of pace. So I don't think he performs as well as last year. I don't think that he does overly poor, but I think that the team gets better in the pass game. Doesn't have to use his legs as much and just does okay.
Who's going next? Who wants
Yeah,
to
what
say?
number are we at?
Yeah, we're at 16 on you, Josh.
Okay. So 16, this is actually where I have Chris Carson. Upside is he's their clear-cut number one guy there in Seattle. Downside is I just believe that Seattle is all about getting it to Lockett and DK, to where it'll just drop Carson from being that top 10 kind of guy that he could be. But Seattle's just all about passing for me.
Who do you have at 15, Josh?
Did you guys already go through your 16?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. At 15, I actually have Josh Jacobs here. And it's 100% for the same reasons that you just said, Kev, with bringing in a bigger name like Drake. That there's going to be some type of takeaway from his carries. And it's enough to drop him out of the top 10 of where he finished last season.
Chucks?
I have the same guy, Josh Jacobs, 15.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Good stuff.
I think that's the closest all three of us have come on the same guys so far.
Yeah. So I think it's fair. Yeah.
At 15, this is where I have Gibson. I said I'm a little bit higher on him than Josh is. I think that McKissick there hurts him a little bit as far as the PPR value goes, because obviously we know that's where the catches are going to go. But as far as the run game, I think that he could be a premier guy if put in a better situation. I mean, their line's okay. Their passing is not anything to really open things up. It's not something that people are going to be dropping back on to open up the field for him, but just enough to be just outside of the RB1s for me.
Kev, who do you have at 14?
Well, did everybody give their 15?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. At 14 for me, this is where I had to rearrange my list because I had first missed him off of injury is Joe Mixon. I think that he comes back and plays well, but obviously coming back off of an injury like that and not have ever being a top back, I would say. Not, he was never a Saquon, to where you say that's an elite talent that could bounce back and be just as good after an injury, to where he's just below that, to where does he really get all of that juice back in the tank for him? So I'm excited. I hope I'm low on him. I hope that he outperforms that because I do like him. I do like what he does catching the ball out of the backfield a little bit too. So I hope that he steps up from this, but I think for me, the floor is 14 for him. Josh?
I have Joe Mixon at 14.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess I'm the only one that's a little bit higher on him.
I agree with Kevin at 14, so it's not much else to say. Yeah. I really do think, though, like, I think he'll be good, but I have similar concerns. I want to see him play to bounce back and healthy, back to his old form. I do think that just as a talent, Joe Mixon's always been underrated. I always thought he was one of the better talents, but being in Cincy for so long, like, no one pays attention to you, and that team has been horrible, and offensive line has been horrible, so that kind of like masks some of his potential for production. But I've always thought Joe Mixon was a great talent, and so I hope he makes it. Like I said, all this whole tier, RB10, RB17 is the same. So I think Joe Mixon at 14, I think he does have RB1 potential.
Yeah, Brett says no Geo raises his floor as well, which I believe
it's pretty much just
true.
him. Yeah, it's him.
So for me at 14, it pains me to put him this low just because of my dynasty and how much I need saving. 14 is where I have James Robinson. I'm still just running from the fact of Etienne being there, so I'm not going to blame it on him being drafted of why he's so low. I would just say he fell this far just because of, like I said earlier, the show, guys coming back from injuries and, possibly rookies stepping in that I think have a better chance of getting higher on the list than him.
Yeah, for me, I'm a little bit higher on him than you are. He was a tough one to rank just because of how much of a question mark the whole team is, right? I mean, new coach, new quarterback, a new running back, a handful of new receivers. Like, what are we going to really see out of this team? It's not anything close to what it was last year. I think that just because I do believe in his pure talent that he will produce and at least be an RB1. I don't think it's going to be the shock and all like last year, to where it was basically an undrafted guy finishing in the top 5, top 10 in most leagues. I do think that Etienne hurts him a little bit catching out of the backfield, but I think it also opens things up to be a Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb situation, to where they will really feed off each other and not have to worry about your weaknesses because they complement each other well, in my opinion.
I like James Robinson talent-wise. I just don't know. I have to see how. I don't know what Urban Meyer is going to do. That's my question. With Etienne and Robinson, it's just about Urban Meyer. So we'll see. But I like both of them as talent. So I like that you have them this high. I wish I could be as high on Robinson as you, but again, it's just the coaches. It's just the coach. I don't know what to expect from him.
Who do you have at 14?
14. I already said Joe Mixon. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
13.
13. That's where I have my son Miles Sanders. I already explained. I already talked about him a lot earlier, and I think he's going to surprise people, especially with a healthy offensive line. If they stay healthy. So if they stay healthy, Miles is primed for a big year, and so I think he's going to surprise a lot of fantasy heads who will want to write him off so early. So I have him at 13.
13 is where I have Kareem Hunt. I think that he still finishes right as a fringe RB1, just as where he was last year. I think that even with a couple guys coming back healthy, it doesn't really affect them too much just because of his role in the pass game. So I think that he just runs flat basically compared to last year.
13 for me. This is actually where I am placing my front runner rookie of the season, and this is where I have Najee Harris at. I think that regardless of what people say about Pittsburgh's offensive line, I think that they're going to pull. And I know, Kev, you mentioned this to me prior to the show tonight, and I'm going to completely swipe your idea from you. And I believe you said it. They're going to have the same effect that James Conner had, where it was kind of a surprise to them. But hopefully for Najee's case, it doesn't turn into a James Conner situation where, after the one season, he just becomes brittle and just breaks by just looking at him.
Yeah, I think that the comment that I made earlier was kind of a shock and awe. When you're talking about linemen, a lot of moves that they make are muscle memory, and they kind of adjust that in game to players that they're familiar with because everybody cuts differently, and moves differently. Their feet move different, their hips move different, and I'm sure Chucks can attest to that. To where I think when you see a lot of these young, unseen at the NFL level running backs come in, usually do well out the gate. The exact opposite when it comes to receivers. When we talk about running backs, we talked about James Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, James Conner when he first stepped in when Bell held out. Conner looked like an all-star. Nobody could really stop him outside of a barber maybe because of his god-awful haircut. But what he did on the field, however, when he had first came in was unbelievable. And now kind of fallen off. Obviously not on the team anymore. Now moved to a second back, committee type back elsewhere. So I do believe he's going to do really well there, Harris, especially having the size on him and them talking about 300 plus carries on the season. I just think the workload is there. There is there enough for him to do well. There's no way he doesn't do well with that many carries.
I don't want to speak on Najee yet because I have him ranked high. So
Okay.
I'll speak on him when I get to him.
See, that just helps me because I don't feel crazy. Like, I don't feel like I put him too high as it is.
Oh yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah, I got torn. I got torn on for for how I ranked my rookies last week.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't blame you. If they're gonna tear you apart, they're gonna tear me apart for where I have them. But so that was your 13, right?
Yes.
13. Kevin,
Yep.
did you say your 13?
Yeah, I had Hunt at 13.
Okay. So we're going to 12.
Yep, at 12, this is where I have James Robinson.
Wow, that's really high for my liking, but yeah.
I think this is. I just think that this is more of a. I know we talked about it. I think this is more of a ceiling spot for him. I think that I'm a little bit higher on him most. I'm taking I know the talent's there, so I'll look away from the question marks about the team structure a little bit more. but I can see where people just don't want to touch him in general because of the unknown. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
who do you have here, Chucks?
At 12, I have Antonio Gibson, and I talked about how McKissick doesn't worry me. Um, I've heard reports and quotes from coaches so far that Rivera plans to use Gibson as a receiver more, which is music to my ears because Gibson coming out of Memphis last year, he was a receiver being converted to running back, and he had to learn the running back position. But it was funny seeing as the year went on, he was hardly used as a receiver, which is a little bit backwards. But I want to see him used more as a receiver because he's shown in Memphis he can do that. And as I did a tape study, I did a film breakdown video of Gibson from his Thanksgiving Day game, and man, Gibson really has come a long way since week one to even that game on Thanksgiving. He's made huge strides as a running back, learning and picking up the nuances of the position. And he's so far from perfect, but for him to be that good already in just 1 year or less than a year, and he's still growing and developing, like I'm really high on him as a talent. And I think Rivera and Washington, they are high on him too. So I have him this high at 12 with the notion, with the understanding and expectancy of him being used more as a receiver and being a dual threat. And that's why he's at 12 for me.
Who do you have at 12, Josh?
12. I won't talk too much on him because we already, I believe we all kind of went through him. But the 12 is actually where I have Kareem Hunt at, and pretty much same reason that you said, Kev. I think he kind of just stays the same here. And like I said, he finished 10th on the season last year, and just repeating it yet again with other players coming back, it just kind of pushes him down the list a little further.
You guys ranking him higher than me? Like, I regret putting him that low now because I thought I was high on him, and I'm like 18, and I might get laughed at for having this high. But you guys having this high, it makes me happy. That hey, like I can rank him higher.
Well,
but that's
that's
I was
how I am
surprised
with
that
Gibson.
I was surprised you were so low on him just because I knew that pre-off-field issues, he was the guy for you.
Yeah, he was my guy. Yeah,
and
yeah.
then obviously everything happened. And it kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, but forgot that he can still play football. So
yeah, he never stopped being an elite talent, and he's
right.
From what I've researched and heard, he's done a lot to kind of like repair his image and make up, atone for what he did before, which is all you can ask. Everyone deserves a second chance, in my opinion. So good to hear that. I think he's making the most out of his time in Cleveland, which is his hometown. I think it's a perfect spot for him right now. So yeah, redoing this, he's the one guy I might put higher because you guys make great points, and I didn't realize he finished that high statistics wise last year. He was an RB1, so yeah, I might put him higher if I re-ranked this.
I'd be willing to gamble that the reason he did finish that high is just because of the games that Chubb did miss.
Yeah.
So the games that Chubb missed, 4 straight, he had, at least according to FSA's points last year, which I think we changed a couple of things on, but for this sake, it was 19.8, 8.2, 20.7, and 10.8.
I have a feeling, Kev, let me ask you a quick question. Do we have different scoring scoring layouts between Redraft and Dynasty?
I might be looking at the wrong one.
I think you're looking at Dynasty because for me, because I know 100% I'm looking at Redraft, including the game that Chubb got injured, which I'm assuming because Chubb only had 5 points in that game. Hunt had 21.6, 21.3, 9.2, 22.2, and then 11.8. So
You are probably right because I was looking at the wrong list.
yeah,
We're
I'm
not
willing
gonna
to
talk
bet
about
that part of Kareem Hunt being top 10 is based off of Chubb missing games.
So for me, at 11 is where I have Najee.
Not too far.
Not too far.
I think that with Big Ben already seen with ice everywhere, I think they are going to use him as much as they had Le'Veon out the gate, just to try to preserve Big Ben for the full season. And I think I don't want to make any comparisons to Le'Veon because when Le'Veon was at least a Steeler, he was top in the leagues. I mean, it was, they had a three-headed monster that nobody could really touch with him and Brown there. So I don't want to make that comparison yet, but he has that type of upside to really do well in this system.
So for me at 11, this is where I would say is my question mark of this list because of two factors. And this is where I have David Montgomery because of Tariq Cohen coming back. See, you're giving me that face again, Kev. You're giving me that face again.
No, keep going. I like where this is going.
I haven't mentioned Montgomery yet, so he's probably
Oh, he hasn't. I knew somebody
I
hasn't yet. So Cohen's coming back. They have Fields, who I guess everybody's saying by week 4, I believe somebody commented it. Fields is going to be starting. And this is where I put that question mark of, one, does Cohen have an effect on Montgomery's workload? And also, does Fields have a effect on his workload? And it hopefully in the case of making my list make sense, Chicago realizes the type of running back he is, and they don't let Fields affect it.
Yeah, once I get to him, I'll give my opinion.
Real quick, we have Brett chiming in saying, since we're closing in on where I would rank him, where would you guys have ranked Cam Akers on the list?
I probably would have put him a couple spots higher than here. We're at 11 now, going to 10. I probably would have had him about here, probably at like 10.
I probably would have had him around the 11 to 15 range. I think he's a good running back, but I just haven't seen enough from him to put him in that top 10 area. I mean, he didn't really take off until the playoffs, I believe.
Yeah, but in the playoffs, he looked like an absolute stud. That could be a pure bell cow. And like if you watch that tape compared to the rest of the season, you might as well just consider that a new season because everything was different. So if he was to continue that success into this year, I could see him as a top 10 back.
I did have him around 12 to 13, around that range. And you talked about his, or how he looked in the playoffs, Kev. You're absolutely right. Like, for context, Cam was not very raw, but like he was so used to running behind a horrible offensive line at Florida State. And so he didn't really have disciplined footwork and vision when he came into LA. And so that had to be developed, had to be taught. But by the time it hit the playoffs, you see him in that one playoff game, I believe against the Seahawks. Man, the guy, like I said last year, or in that draft class, that out of all the running backs, Akers had the highest ceiling out of all the running backs because his physical talent was immense. I think sadly that's gone out the window now because with a torn Achilles, it's hard for football players to recover and be the same athlete they once were. the numbers are very, very low. So I mean, it's unfortunate. I was really upset because he was going to be Kevin. You know, you're in our league. He
Yeah.
was going to be one of my keepers. So like, I was really upset. But yeah, I did have him around 12 to 13. It's a shame because he had such high potential, and I hope he still comes back, proves me wrong, and is every bit the running back that he was supposed to be, especially in that system. But man, like he had a really high ceiling. He was so talented, and I was highly upset he got hurt.
Who do you have at 10, Chucks?
I didn't say my 11. I think
Okay. Well, who
yeah,
do you have there
11.
then?
11. This is where I have Clyde, and the
Really?
only reason. Did you both say Clyde already?
We have him
Yeah.
low. I
Way
had him
Yeah,
at
low, right?
22.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let me tell you why I have him this high, and why don't have him higher. Um, I think people need to realize that when it comes Clyde in that draft class, he was my RB1 above J.K. Dobbins, above Jonathan Taylor, above everyone else. He was my RB1, and because of everyone, he has the best vision. He has unbelievable quickness, awesome underrated strength and power as a runner, and he's versatile. He's a tremendous pass catcher, and he's in a system. Andy Reid that used Brian Westbrook as a top tier fantasy running back for several years, and that system which is very running back friendly. And I think that people don't really understand how good of a runner Clyde is because last year for some reason he was mixed in with a bunch of other runners. The only reason why I don't have him higher is because I don't know how much he's going to be used in the passing game, which is odd because coming out of college, he was a tremendous receiver and then he wasn't used at all. He was barely used at all his rookie season. Maybe that's because he had to learn and develop still. But I do believe he has that potential. He has that ability to be kind of like one of the best dual threat running backs in the game. And so having that kind of potential, that's why I have him this highly ranked. And I know they brought in McKinnon, who's a good receiver. But if Clyde, I honestly believed, and remember, they drafted him at the end of the first round. This isn't some like mid or late round running back that they took. They took a first round pick. They took him with a first round pick. So they have high expectations for him. I think if Clyde develops the way he's supposed to, there's no other running back that's going to touch him on that team. It doesn't matter if it's McKinnon. It doesn't matter if it's Darrell Williams. It doesn't matter who it is. It's going to be Clyde's show. It's just a matter of how much he can bring along. And so I think the potential is way too high to not ignore. And I know they have other weapons there in the receiving game, like they have Mikael Hardman, Tyreek Hill. But remember, we're talking about Andy Reid. Andy Reid passes like 70% of the time. Like he doesn't run the ball a lot. So I think that if Clyde earns those receiving reps, he's going to have more than enough touches go his way. So that's why I have him this high because the potential is way too high for him.
Chris also says that it helps that Mahomes actually asked for him and was voting for him to get drafted there. So having that type of stamp of approval definitely helps. I think he's more of a guy for me. And I say this in reverse because there's another guy on the list that we haven't mentioned yet that I don't want to miss on because he has the potential. Clyde is a guy that I don't want to shoot on because I know that where he finished last year, I don't want to be the guy that takes him and he finishes at his floor, which is where I had him at 22. So I don't want, I know that the growth could be there, the carry share could be there, but I don't want to over exude and take him this high and he run flat. So, but I do understand where you're coming from as far as the talent is there. It's just putting all the pieces together now.
Where did you, knowing Andy Reid though, look at his history of running backs and how he's used a number one running back.
Well,
Brian Westbrook, McCoy, And then when he went to Kansas City, he had Jamal Charles, and then he had Kareem Hunt for those 2 years. And look how they prospered, and look how,
Well, I believe
fantasy, they were all fantasy studs, like RB1s. You're talking about RB1s. So the history is not only telling you otherwise. Like, to me, the floor is not 22. The floor is 14, 15. That's the floor. I think his floor is higher, a lot higher than where you guys have him at because of all the other factors. I think the ceiling is much higher if he is used in the receiving game. But if he's used as is as a runner, his floor is RB high end RB2.
Yeah, I think that obviously the history is there with Andy Reid and running backs to do well with them. I just think that this is also a different ball game when you throw in a quarterback like Mahomes and then the extreme speed that they have in the receiving core, and then obviously the check down is Travis Kelce. So those types of receptions that a normal receiving back would get isn't necessarily there. So I am again a little bit lower on him, well, a lot lower on him than most people in general. Brett says basically CEH to the moon. You don't have to listen to Brett. His opinion doesn't matter. Where's that put us at? 10? Chucks?
Top 10.
10. All right, so 10, and this is the last guy I have for my third tier, and it's J.K. Dobbins. So with J.K. Dobbins, I was really debating on putting in tier 2, but I put him at the top of this tier. I think that they talk about using him more in the passing game, so that's great. I still need to see it first because when I scouted him in college, he was good. He wasn't like a Clyde in terms of being a receiver. He had some things I still would like him to work on. So with him barely being used as a receiver his rookie year, I need to see it first. But the volume, the running game is going to be there, and that's why I have him this high. And he's an immense talent. He's so good, and he reminds me so much. And I don't take the off the field issues out of it, but he reminds me so much of Ray Rice when he was the Ravens. And it's funny because they wear the same number, but similar game, smaller, stout runners, like very good contact balance, very good agility. He's another guy, him and Clyde, where I have him at 10 and 11, but they could finish much higher. I think that's what the ceiling is. Ceiling is top 5, but I have them right now at 10 and 11.
Yeah, my issue with Dobbins is just the carry share. I think that their number one running back throws the ball. I think that hurts him. Last year, he did miss one game and only averaged 12.6 points a game, finishing at 25 overall. So I think for me to see that big of a jump, I would have to see it first to believe it versus shooting this high and ranking him and saying, oh, yeah, I'm confident putting him there. But I do see the talent in general. I just don't know if it will be in that system just because of where the shares go.
Kev, who do you have at number 10?
Did you say you're 10, Josh?
No, I did not.
10 for myself is...
Sorry.
Yeah, 10 where I have myself is Chubb. I think we kind of already touched on him enough. I think that he finishes close to where he did last year, a little bit higher, given those 4 games back. As long as he stays healthy, I think that he's one of the last pure downhill rushers. I don't think there's many similar to your Henrys or Barkleys, guys that basically just take the ball, run that way, just go straight and do it well enough. has a little bit of mobility, obviously, between the tackles, but I think just that pure power puts him up in my top 10.
So for 10, for me, this is actually where I have Jonathan Taylor. I just think that with Hines and not so much Mac I'm worried about, but with Hines coming back, it's definitely going to be a thorn in his side. And I mean, if you just look at the games that Jonathan Taylor kind of regressed a little bit and he kind of had like an off week, that's where Hines flourished. And I think it's just going to be the same thing this season with either Hines or Mac, because you had week 1, Taylor had 15.9 to 29.3. Week 8, 6.6 to 23.2. And then week 10, 7.7 to 33. I mean, that's the difference maker of Taylor finishing in 5th compared to, had he had those points, he could have been maybe top 3 and knocked Henry down.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit higher on him.
That, and just with the Wentz injury, I think that it doesn't help him as well.
Who do you have at 9, Josh?
At 9, this is where I have Joe Mixon. I believe it was Brett that actually agreed with me, and I am a firm believer of, I think no Geo is going to actually help him. And I think that he comes back from his injury and skyrockets all the way up inside the top 10.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I want him to. I want him to get back into that top tier of guys. It's just hard to do it where he was and then throw the injury in where he's going to be. For myself at 9 is where I put Zeke at.
Okay.
I think that I don't. It's funny because I'm looking at my quarterback rankings as well. I have Dak at 9 as well. I think that I'm a lot lower on the Cowboys' offense in general. I think I'm also a lot lower on both of them when they play together. I think that they are both talented, but I think that there's too much talent there to put up top 5 numbers for both. I think if Dak didn't have Zeke, who is a phenomenal runner, then he would do more in the pass game and flip-flop for Zeke. If their pass game wasn't as strong, he could jump up a little bit. So I'd put him at the bottom end of RB1s at 9.
9.
Chuck's. Yep.
9. So the first running back of my second tier, and I have RB5 to RB9 for my second tier. So RB9, I have Najee Harris. So I'm higher on him than either of you.
And I'm okay with that. I'm 100% okay with that.
I'm okay with that. I think the issue is just it's a rookie, so everyone's always a little bit skeptical because they haven't seen him in the big leagues.
And I understand that. Yeah, and I totally get it. But, like, Najee, to me, like, I was, like, this past draft, I couldn't sing his praises enough. Like, maybe I'll have him. Like, I have him, in terms of draft-wise, I had him similarly graded as Clyde the year before. And so, like, the only reason why I don't have Clyde higher is because they didn't use him in the passing game that I expected them to do. If they did, or if I knew they were going to use him as a receiver, he would be ranked just one above Najee. But because I haven't seen it, then I have to knock him down a notch. But anyways, I have no qualms about Najee and how he's going to be used in Pittsburgh. Why? Because, Kevin, you talked about it. Because they already had Le'Veon Bell. It's pretty much going to be the Le'Veon Bell role. I am not worried about him being another Connor. Why? Because Connor was never the talent that Bell was, and he was never the talent that Najee Harris is. But Connor was always just a solid guy that got a bunch of production because they were focusing on all the other weapons. And so I was never sold on Connor as a talent, but Najee Harris is so talented. He does everything. Everything. He does everything. His weakest part of his game is pass protection, but even that part, it isn't horrible. Like, he has the will and the want in pass protection. So I don't think he's going to. I think it's just a matter of coaching and just fine tuning some stuff there. But he's an incredible receiver already, great runner. He's going to be exactly what Pittsburgh wants. So I can't put him any lower than this. Najee Harris, like that, yeah, like the comment here, are you not worried about the own line? I am worried about that own line, but if I wasn't worried about that own line, I'd have him higher. And the good thing about a running back like Najee and how he's going to be used is because his floor is still going to be high enough because he's going to be used as a receiver. He's going to be flexed out. He's going to be part of the passing game. And so I still think that it's, his floor is still going to be low end RB1, maybe high end RB2, but like that when they drafted him, it was one of the most predictable things. It was like he's perfect for Steelers. He's exactly what they want. And so, to me, I'm way too. I like him too much of a talent not to have him lower.
Yeah, he was one of the guys that kind of went to the perfect situations with the Steelers. Like, he couldn't get any more clear cut. Yes, that's where you belong type of feels.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 8?
Me?
Chucks.
Oh, me. Okay. Sorry. At 8, I have Zeke. And
Okay.
I want to have him higher. And a lot of Eagles fans might be surprised when I say that. But like, putting my fanhood aside, like, just looking from being a running back guy, I think Zeke has been too good for way too long for me to completely write him off. And I've seen videos and images of him this offseason. He has slimmed down a lot. He is trim, and he's a lot more slim than what he was before. He's not carrying as much weight. Therefore, I think he's going to get a lot of that burst back. And as long as the Cowboys' offensive line is good enough, at least good, I think Zeke is going to have a bounce back year. But again, I have to see it first. And the reason why I have to see it first is why I don't have him higher than the other guys in the same tier, which I will get to.
Who do you have at 8, Josh?
At 8, this is where I have Nick Chubb. I think that it's just the perfect spot for him. I think that he rises up a little bit, dependent upon he plays the whole season. The only downside that I have to him, and this is a little bit of a personal skepticism, is that I always get skeptical of running backs who just get paid. I feel like every time a running back gets paid, they just sit back and put their feet up for the whole season.
Jumping back to this, Chris says to ask Brett about Elliott. He says that he has a man crush for his new photos, and Brett confirms he does have a man crush for Zeke.
Every time I think of Zeke, I think of the video of just him eating the cereal. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Or his belly shirts.
Oh yes. My gosh, that's iconic.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong for worrying about running backs that got paid. Outside of a few guys, Zeke could probably be one of them. The other one is a guy who I have at 8 rather, is Aaron Jones. Got paid, still performed. And I think that it's going to continue this year, especially being a must-win, win-now type of situation with Rodgers coming back for 1 year. He knows his best chance is going to be this year, so it's all or nothing all the way around for them.
Was that the end of 8?
No, that was the first for 8.
No, I said Chubb was my 8. You had Aaron Jones, and then
Chucks, who did you have at 8? That was Zeke?
At 8 is Zeke, yes.
okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so then 7 for me is Jonathan Taylor. Basically, all the reasons Josh gave, just a little higher. I think that I think the other running backs in the room affect him a little bit less. I think that no Wentz for any given time helps him. I think that means that they're just going to have to lean on the running game a little bit more, knowing that they can. And I think that personally, Wentz is a step up from Philip Rivers. Jacob Eason is a question mark in the comparison, so it's kind of hard to judge where that would be. I can't say that it goes down because he's played with worse in Philip Rivers compared to what he's been practicing with in Wentz and what was expected of him. So um, I'm kind of high on him here at 7. Who
Chuck,
do
who
you
do you
have,
have at
Chucks?
7?
At 7, I have Chubb. I have Nick Chubb.
Okay.
And I forget where you guys had him ranked. Where did you have him ranked?
Yes, I was. Yeah, Josh had him at 8, and I have him at 10. So
Okay, so like we're all
all
around the
pretty
same range.
close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chubb is to me, Chubb is the best pure runner in the league.
Yep.
Best pure runner, just in terms of just running the ball. Best pure runner in the league. He's so good. And I know you brought up your concern, Josh, about like running backs getting paid, which is completely a valid concern because you always worry about like them falling off. But I think Chubb is someone that, knowing his demeanor, he's such just like a quiet, reserved, blue collar lunch pail guy that just comes to work, does his job, and like doesn't make too much of a fuss, and isn't a diva at all. I think that Chubb will be absolutely fine, and so I'm pretty secure with him at 7.
Who do you have at 7, Josh?
So at 7, this is actually where I have Aaron Jones at. I just think that, because he was actually a free agent at one point, so he had the option to walk away. So I think that the fact that he kind of chose to come back to Green Bay just says that he's ready to come back and, just go to work. And just like what you said, Kev, with how this is probably Roger, or most likely Rodgers' last season in Green Bay, that they are going to make a decent push for playoffs, if not Super Bowl.
I wouldn't go that far, but okay.
Well, yeah. They are a Super Bowl team. I mean, let's be honest. They can be.
They can't get past the Green Bay Invitational game, okay? Where you get invited to beat Green Bay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everybody always talks about like, oh, yeah, they have to go up to Lambeau to play them.
Who do you have at 6, Josh?
At 6, this is where I have probably the running back that I felt like I had to put him here, and I really didn't want to because I'm just not that high on him. This is where I have Derrick Henry. He gives you the rushing yards and the attempts and all that stuff, but in no way, shape, or form is he going to get on your good side in a PPR league.
Yeah, I could see the concerns there. And Brett says that don't forget, if the Packers win the Super Bowl, Kevin gets all say over Damian's trades for a year. I don't know if that was an actual bet or not, but I mean, I'll take it regardless.
There's only one bet that I know of between you and Damian.
I don't remember.
It's the Ruggs and Edwards.
Oh yeah. So at 6 for myself, this is where I have Monty. All the way up to 6. Yes.
Holy.
So last year he finished at 4th and only missed one, and he did miss one game. 20.4 average. To me, this is a guy that I've kind of jumped on the train, right? So, you talk about all the different types of leagues you're in, and all the different trades that people get involved in, and I've said no thanks many, many times. Last year, I went on record saying David Montgomery, who was that? Does he play in the league? Poking fun at it, just to turn around and actually investigate and look at the stat line and realize that, oh my God, I missed out on an absolute stud for what he pulled off last year. Compared to where he finished last year, I do have his numbers regressing a little bit, not in the top 5, but I think the talent is there. Cohen doesn't worry me. I'm all aboard David Montgomery train this year.
Chucks, who do you have at number 6?
6. All right. First, I just want to say Montgomery at 6. That's crazy. Oh, we'll see though. We will see. We're at 6. Wow. At 6, I have Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones at 6.
Okay. So we had him at 6, 7, and 8 between the three of us.
Yeah. So same thing.
Who's your 5? Chuck.
Oh, me. Sorry. 5, I have Derrick Henry.
Used to say a name all the time, Kev.
Yeah.
What?
5, I have Derrick Henry to finish off my second tier, and the reason why he's not in my first tier is because it's PPR.
Yep, I have him at 5 as well.
Okay.
Josh?
At 5, I have Saquon. I think that because of what the Giants team looks like, and more so just having Danny, I can't throw a dime at quarterback, I think that he's going to step in regardless of where he starts, whether he's not ready by week 1 or if he starts maybe 2 or 3. I think he still finishes around 5. And they're just going to use him like a workhorse in both the running game and as that check down guy.
And who do you have at 4?
At 4, I have Zeke. Now, the main purpose of why I have Zeke this high is just because he gets Prescott back. Prior to Prescott getting injured, he actually had about a 25-point average per game, which to my list right here, that actually does put him around that 3 to 4 range. So Prescott plays a full year, you got top 5 Zeke.
Yeah, I don't think it's outlandish to see him there. I'm not going to take him that early because I think there's there's safer picks to go ahead of him, although his ceiling is up there. For me, at 4, I have Saquon. I think that he returns pretty much to form and returns to being one of the, I would probably say, most well-rounded runners. I think that he does a little bit of everything and does everything pretty well. Could perform a little bit better compared to the top names as far as catching, but I think he returns to typical Saquon. Chuck, who do you have here at 4?
At 4, I have Saquon. And I want to have him higher,
Uh-huh.
but we need to see how he comes back from injury. But to me, like Kevin, you know how I feel about him. To me, he's the most talented running back in the whole league. And he showed that even with a horrible offensive line. So if he's coming back and he's just how he was before with a horrible offensive line, but a little bit more help at receiver, it's going to help him even more. So I think Saquon at RB4 is around his floor if he's healthy. But if he's back to really being healthy and things click right for that team, he could finish as RB1.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think his ceiling is definitely up there. The only real question mark is just the injury.
Yeah.
Josh, who do you have at 3?
At 3, I have Dalvin Cook. I think that he does really good with Minnesota. I guess you could just argue the one point of what we talked about last season with Minnesota, where one week it's one guy, next week it's the next guy that's getting the looks. But I mean, even regardless, he missed 2 games and still finished second, just shy of 400 points. Can't fight, or you can't knock him down much from that. Besides with CMC coming back from injury.
So taking a look at our lists, I assume that these next 3 are all the same 3, just probably in a different order.
Yeah.
So I'm going to rattle mine off. I have Kamara at 3, Cook 2, CMC 1.
Same.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, the same. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all the same here. I think Josh's homerisms put Kamara at second for himself. Don't blame me, bud. We all been there. But if you take a look at CMC, I know people have injury concerns about him. But if you take a look at the games that he played, I mean, the first 3 games, absolutely monster games. Came back for 1 game, put up over 30. I mean, I think they just rushed him back to off the injuries. So I think that there's no real worry for me having a full off season. And I really hope this isn't true, Josh.
Well, do I have some explaining to do? Because that is exactly what the case is. I do have Kamara over CMC. That is because I think that there's competition in Carolina for receptions compared to competition for receptions in New Orleans. And I think that, having Winston or Taysom there, depending on who is there, they're going to use Kamara like a check down god, because you're out Kamara, or not Kamara, you're out Thomas for goodness knows how long. You're down your number 1 receiver. Next one up is Traquan and Adam Troutman, but you have a number one receiver of a running back, so they're going to use him. I guarantee it. And they're going to, and then, last season Kamara didn't play week 17. This season they get an extra week, and they're going to be playing him all 18 weeks or 17 games, because they're going to be fighting all season.
Yeah, my biggest concern with him is just exactly what you mentioned. There's a lot of pieces missing for the Saints, which means you're only left with Kamara, which means nothing. There's no surprises. There's nothing opened up. The game plan gets stripped back to where, hey, let's just put 2 guys over here and block Kamara, and okay, we win. There's not going to be anything fancy or flashy or any surprise. I mean, yes, he's going to be open, because who can't throw the ball 5 yards and find him, or rush for a couple of he's got the opportunity. But I think that until they figure out what the new look offense is, that he may step back a little bit as far as the what your evaluation of timeshare is going to be. But that about wraps it up for our rankings. Again, thanks for chiming with us, giving us your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Real quick, Chris says, I have a question for Josh. You're on the clock, 101. Who do you take? I see it's the same thing as last week's. I feel like somebody asked me the same question, is because I had Allen at 1 and I had Mahomes at 2, and they said, somebody asked me, if you had the first pick, who are you taking? I'm going to take Mahomes, just because I'm a trend follower. Easy. Just like if I have 101, unfortunately, I'm going to take CMC. I would never hear the end of it if I let CMC fall behind me because I took Kamara.
You gotta stick with your gut there, bud.
I mean,
if you
I'm
got
sticking
Kamara
with my
over
gut
him,
as far as the list.
If you got Kamara over him, then you take him. You go get your guy.
I'm okay with taking CMC and then eating my words when CMC gets injured again and Kamara takes number 1. I am okay with that.
Well, regardless, that about wraps it up for us.
Yes.
Josh, get us on out of here.
Yes. real quick, Chucks, thank you for making an appearance on the show tonight. I really appreciate your above average stats. You have my mind is just all over the place because of just where you are pulling things from. I will say that. But
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
no problem. But as always, before we return to our regularly scheduled Average Bros Fantasy Show on August 10th at 8:30 p.m., Kevin, I might as well ask you because I know you guys have been off the radar for a little bit.
I have no idea if we're having another show tomorrow. Stay tuned.
You heard it from that man first. So if they are going live, it will most likely be brought up in the Discord or on Twitter or wherever Kevin and Brian like to go to. And you can catch them at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. And also make sure you guys check out Brad, Josh, and Eric this weekend at midnight Eastern Standard Time on August 7th. And if you guys are unable to watch us live, you guys can catch us on Anchor, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, anywhere you can find us for your listening pleasures. Again, thank you guys for watching the Average Bros Fantasy Show, sponsored by Football Darts and Fantasy Sports Alliance. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe to the show, and follow us on all of our social media outlets. And as always, before we head out, I want to thank all of our sponsors: QB54, Monkey Knife Fight, Nature Coast Tailgating, Cranky Veteran Candle Company, Shell & Mel's Boutique, Finger Lakes Mercantile, Southern Sirens, Sugar Scrub, Redwood Durables, and of course the Recast, who are the official music of FSA. Real quick, Brett says you take CMC because you can trade for Kamara plus more. And Brett as well says, thanks for the input, Chuck.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Jonathan says, Kevin and Josh, DM me later. We will. Okay, I guess we won't. Either Chucks or Kevin, do you guys have any final words for everyone?
Nope, that's it from myself. Everybody except for Damien, have a great night.
Don't even do it.
Rocks.
Don't even do it. All right, Kevin, Chucks, everybody else watching at home, anybody who watches after this show is done live and all that nonsense, everybody have a great evening and stay average.